About a mile out of Whaley Bridge, beside the back road to Disley, stands a small stone memorial, half hidden by the undergrowth. The inscription reads, William Wood, Eyam, Derbyshire, here murdered July 16th AD 1823. Prepare to meet thy God. The account of the attack, as proffered in many publications at the time, is as follows. On Wednesday last, about 7 o'clock, Mr. William Wood of Eyam, Derbyshire, was discovered robbed and murdered by the roadside between Disley and Whaley Bridge on his return from Manchester Tuesday's market. This atrocious murder, there is every reason to suppose, was committed by 3 men dressed in sailors' clothes, who were observed to follow him through Disley, up the old road, both parties having, it appears, previously met by accident at a public house in Howe Lane. Mr. Wood, having refreshed himself, being on foot, left the house and was followed in about 10 minutes by the 3 men, who, taking the same road, came up with him within a short distance of Whaley, where he was found, his pockets turned inside out and his head beaten in the most dreadful manner possible. The villains, not content with using their own bludgeons, had even taken the stones from the wall and used them for the hellish purpose, as a large basketful had been picked up and removed along with the body to the Cock Inn for the decision of the coroner's jury. The unfortunate man, when found, was buried under the stones of the wall, which they had pulled upon him to conceal him. Mr. Wood is a married man, about 30 years of age, and has a family of 3 children, and there is too much reason to fear the murderers have had a considerable booty, as he received a large sum in Manchester, though he had paid several accounts on the day of the murder, one to a gentleman in Stockport. No trace has yet been made of the assassins, though they are observed to take the road leading to Buxton. The 3 perpetrators straightway made their way to Whaley Bridge on foot. This was about 8:30 at night. One of the men approached a return chase driver and asked for the passage to Buxton. As the chase was already occupied, the driver refused such a request. The action then moves to Macclesfield. The Macclesfield Courier reports, on Thursday morning, 3 young men, 2 rather shabbily dressed, and the 3rd in a new fustian jacket and trousers, came into the town and went to the Golden Lion public house. The youngest of the 3 then proceeded to Mr. Burgess's in Chestergate and purchased 3 complete suits of clothes. He also bought shoes, etc. from Mr. Wainwright in the same street, and then returned to his companions, who stated they were related to Mr. David Brown and wished to change their clothes before they saw him. After buying the new clothes in Macclesfield on the Thursday to replace those covered in blood, the 3 accused took the coach to Manchester. When news of the murder reached Macclesfield, they were soon identified as possible suspects. Constable Frost was then sent to arrest them. When the 3 turned up in the Greyhound pub in Manchester later that day, the waiter recognised them as having been there 2 days earlier, the day before the murder, and was immediately suspicious as they were now wearing expensive new clothes. The waiter sent his son to the police station, who returned with 2 constables, but by the time they arrived, Dale and Platt had left, abandoning Taylor, who was arrested and taken to New Bailey Prison. On the following morning, Friday, Dale and Platt were seen drinking in another Manchester pub, the Coach and Horses, and again a suspicious landlord alerted the police. They again managed to escape before the police arrived, and were last seen fleeing across the fields in the direction of Oldham. In the meantime, William's body was taken on the back of a cart to the Cock Public House, and this is where the inquest was held just 3 days later. On Saturday, 19th of July, an inquest was held at the house of Mr. Sykes, the Cock Inn, Whaley, before John Hollins, Esquire, coroner, and a respectable jury, on the body of this unfortunate man who was found barbarously murdered at a place called Longside, on the old road from Disley to Whaley Bridge, on the previous Wednesday evening, about 7:30, on his return from Manchester's Tuesday's market, whither he had attended as a cotton manufacturer and had received, as near as can be ascertained, £100, no part of which was found upon him. The jury and witnesses proceeded to view the body, which presented a horrid spectacle, the face and head being savagely mutilated and covered with gore. On the head were 10 wounds, inflicted by some blunt instrument, many of a mortal kind. But the one which apparently produced death was on the back of the head, by which the skull was severely fractured and part of it forced into the brain. During the inquest, several persons testified to the fact that they had seen the deceased and several other fellows making their way between Disley and Whaley Bridge on the back road. The 3 fellows were described as being in several states of dress, differing heights, and all appeared to be about 20 years of age. Some witnesses declared they had seen blood on some of the men's clothing, and had elaborated on the blood and hair on the stones from the wall at the scene. With no other evidence appearing to identify the murderers, the jury returned a verdict of wilful murder against some person or persons unknown. As has been mentioned, one of the murder suspects, 17-year-old Charles Taylor, was arrested and taken to New Bailey Prison in Manchester, where the story takes another turn, as the Manchester Mercury of 29th of July 1823 revealed. Charles Taylor, the person apprehended at the Greyhounds public house, was discovered about 1 o'clock on Friday afternoon by Mr. Evans, the turnkey at the New Bailey, suspended on a stovepipe which crosses the room where he was confined. The wretched murderer, it appears, had tied his stockings together and, with the assistance of his gaiters, was enabled to make them sufficient for the fatal purpose. He was not quite dead when found, but had so far affected his fatal purpose that he had not been able to speak since, and he died on Sunday morning about 3 o'clock. Another of the miscreants, Joseph Dale, supposed to be concerned with this cruel and barbarous murder, has been apprehended at Liverpool. It appears he had attempted to enlist and was taken on board the Mary of Great Yarmouth, lying in Salthouse Dock, by the active and laudable exertions of Sergeant Major Ari, of the recruiting staff at Liverpool. On Friday, Mr. Lavender, the Deputy Constable, went over and on Saturday returned with his prisoner and lodged him in our New Bailey prison. On Monday, Joseph Dale was removed to Whaley, where he will undergo an examination before a magistrate of that district, and from thence be conveyed to Chester Castle to take his trial. Platt, the other accomplice, has not yet been taken. The trial of Joseph Dale for the murder of William Wood took place at Chester Castle. One of his co-accused, Charles Taylor, had already hung himself in Manchester's New Bailey prison a few weeks earlier. Dale pleaded not guilty. The other, Platt, was still at large. The conditions for prisoners at Chester Castle, where Joseph Dale stood for trial for the murder of William Wood, were said to be extremely harsh. John Mellor, the farmer's servant who discovered the body, gave his evidence first. He had been leading a horse-drawn cart along the road between Disley and Whaley Bridge. Edward Pott was next to give evidence. He examined the body and it was still warm. He took the body to the Cock Inn at Whaley in his cart. He examined the pockets and found an old penny, a pocket handkerchief, the top of an umbrella and some class tickets, but no other money or notes. Mary Bradshaw knew William Wood. She saw Wood on the 16th of July. He called at their house between 6 and 7 in the morning and told her he was going to Manchester. The day after she saw the body at the Cock Inn and confirmed it was the body of William Wood. Josiah Cheetham, a manufacturer in Stockport, John Jackson, a stonemason, Joseph Hadfield, who lives on the Disley to Whaley Bridge Road, Thomas Etchells, who lives about a mile further along the road, and William Beard, who lived in Whaley Bridge, all gave evidence on the happenings of that fateful evening. The story now moves to Macclesfield, where Dale and his two co-accused fled on the following day. Macclesfield Bank stood at the junction of Chestergate and Marketplace. It was here that money stolen during William Wood's brutal murder eventually ended up. Elaine Broadhurst, landlady of the Golden Lion, William Wainwright, shoe shop owner in Macclesfield, John Longstaff, an apprentice to Mr. Latham, a watchmaker, Elizabeth Tomlinson, housemaker to Latham, and George Hankinson, clerk to the Macclesfield Bank, all gave their damning accounts of the events that took place at Macclesfield on the Thursday following the murder. Dale pleaded innocence. Here the evidence for the prosecution closed, and the prisoner in his defence said he was innocent either of the robbery or the murder. He had nothing further to say. George Hughes, stucco manufacturer of Manchester, George Burgess, formerly of Knutsford, and lately Constable of Bucklow, and George Henshaw, cotton spinner, severally gave the prisoner the character of being a very peaceable, quiet lad, always good-tempered and kind to his parents. The jury, after consultation of about 2 minutes' duration, returned a verdict of guilty. The prisoner heard the awful decision without any apparent emotion, and shortly afterwards a glass of water or lemonade was brought, which he drank off at a draught. In time-honoured fashion, the judge would have placed a black cloth over his wig when announcing the sentence of death on Dale. From the newspaper reports, he was obviously in a very poor health, and even in those far harsher times, there's a great deal of sympathy for him. Dale has during a considerable part of his confinement been in a poor state of health and frequently afflicted with a severe bowel complaint. On Friday last he had a serious attack, and on Saturday he was considered to be in such a dangerous state as to render it doubtful whether he could survive. The Chief Justice addressed him to take the following effect. Joseph Dale, you were tried here last assizes, indicted with Joseph Platt, and charged with casting stones at a person of the name of Wood, and inflicting upon him mortal wounds of which he instantly died, on the 16th of July last. After much deliberation, the Chief Justice stated, the sentence of this court is that you will be taken from hence to the place of execution on Wednesday next, and be hanged till you are dead, and that your body be dissected. And may the Lord have mercy upon your soul. This illustration shows Chestergate, one of Chester's most ancient streets. Around that time Dale was incarcerated in the nearby jail. He may well have passed this way on the back of a horse-drawn cart through the crowds of spectators to his execution. The story of William Wood's brutal murder on the back road between Whaley Bridge and Disley in 1823 draws to its inevitable conclusion. 19-year-old Joseph Dale, a man described in court as a very peaceable, quiet lad, always good-tempered and kind to his parents, was the only one of the three accused to face justice. Taylor had hung himself whilst waiting for trial, and Platt had escaped capture. The jury had found Dale guilty after just 2 minutes' deliberation. An appeal had been turned down, and now Dale would pay the ultimate price. The Metropolitan Police Act of 1829 was introduced by Sir Robert Peel 6 years after the fateful murder of William Wood. The Act replaced the Statute of Winchester of 1285, which cited as the primary legislation regulating the policing of the country since the Norman Conquest. Scotland Yard set up its Criminal Investigation Department, CID, in 1878. This was some 52 years after the aforementioned occurrence. The CID initially was a small force of plainclothes detectives who gathered information on criminal activities. The City of Manchester Police, also known as the Metropolitan Manchester City Police, and from 1842 to 1853 the Manchester Borough Police, was from the early 19th century until 1968 the territorial police force of the City of Manchester. It was thought at the time that if Mr. Frost, the constable from Macclesfield, had immediately on his arrival here communicated Mr. Lavender at our police office, where he might have expected much important assistance, the result would have been far more satisfactory, instead of which he arrived by the mail coach and, without giving any information whatever, stopped about an hour in town and then returned home. It looks as though Macclesfield's PC Frost took much of the blame for this Keystone Cops debacle and was heavily criticised for not alerting his Manchester colleagues sooner. One of the accounts reads, "The villains, not content with using their own bludgeons," but not one of the witnesses mentioned any of the three men carrying such weapons. One witness stated, on the previous Wednesday evening, about 7:30. Another stated, on the evening of the 16th of July last, about 7 o'clock. A third stated, about 7:30 or 20 minutes before 8. Saw two young men pass him by, and two more men followed. Observed the deceased walk by. I saw three young men walking after him. At 7 in the evening, saw a man pass. The three young men that followed came up in 2 or 3 minutes. With the number of witnesses along that same road, none had mentioned sight of any other. So if timings and sightings were in slight conflict, there would have been no irrefutable evidence at the time to confirm statements either way. We have seen the clothes of these men to conceal the blood on them. At the time, of course, there was no way of determining ownership of the blood, or indeed the fingerprints on the stones so mentioned at the inquest. Mr. Lavender, the deputy constable, had no reason to know that what prisoner Dale said was not true, and from first to last he denied having anything to do with the actual murder. Was this a case of last man standing? The Chief Justice then addressed him to take the following effect. Platt was not in custody, and Taylor, the other associate of your guilt, had put a period to his own existence. You, therefore, was the only person upon whom the guilt could be proved. You were seen walking with Wood, and after the deed, no doubt of guilt. I don't think there can be much doubt that the other two were the actual killers of William Wood. But even today, Dare would have faced a charge of murder as an accomplice. A number of questions remain unanswered. What happened to the £100, some 12,000 in today's money, that Wood was supposed to have had on him? What happened to Wood's body? Where was he buried? And what happened to Platt? The last public hanging in England took place at Newgate, London in 1868, some 45 years after 17-year-old Joseph Dale met such a fate. Memorial Stone of a Murder, 11th of April 1874. The ceremony of uncovering an indication stone got up by subscription in memory of the murder at Higher Disley of a man named William Wood some 57 years ago took place last Saturday in the presence of a large assembly of persons who had gathered to witness the event. The place near the spot is called Longside, situated in the higher parts of Disley Township. A collection, which realised a handsome sum, was made, and the surplus will be devoted to the repair of the village fountain.